The sleek black SUV moved effortlessly down the quiet suburban street, its engine purring softly, nearly silent against the stillness of the night. Inside, Vanessa Carter, a 40-year-old black woman with an air of authority that commanded respect, leaned back in her seat. She exhaled slowly, savoring the rare moment of calm after an exhausting day. Vanessa wasn't just another high-powered professional. She was the director of the FBI, one of the most formidable figures in American law enforcement. Yet at this moment, national security and high-stakes investigations were the furthest things from her mind. All she wanted was to get home, enjoy a quiet meal, and lose herself in the pages of a good book. The road stretched ahead, almost deserted, save for a few scattered cars traveling in the opposite direction. Vanessa's headlights cast long beams of light on the asphalt, cutting through the darkness. The only sounds were the rhythmic hum of the tires against the road and the faint whisper of the night breeze. Then, without warning, red and blue lights erupted in her rearview mirror, flashing violently against the shadows. The piercing wail of a siren followed, yanking her from her peaceful thoughts. Vanessa's grip on the steering wheel tightened as confusion furrowed her brow. She hadn't run a light, hadn't exceeded the speed limit, hadn't done anything wrong. Yet here she was, being pulled over. A familiar mix of irritation and weary resignation coiled in her chest. With a practiced calm, she guided her vehicle to the side of the road and brought it to a stop. As she lowered her window, a tall white police officer, no older than his early 30s, strode toward her vehicle. His uniform was crisp, his posture rigid with authority, and his name tag gleamed in the dim glow of the streetlights. Officer David Thompson. But it wasn't just the uniform that spoke volumes. It was his expression, hard, impatient, and laced with something just shy of hostility. He didn't bother with pleasantries. He didn't ask if she knew why she'd been stopped. Instead, he leaned down slightly, his gaze sweeping over her in the interior of her SUV with an almost predatory scrutiny. "You were stopped for security reasons," he said, his voice cold, clipped. The words carried no explanation, just an unspoken warning. Vanessa straightened in her seat, her face composed, though her pulse quickened. She had spent decades in law enforcement, had seen every shade of misconduct, but that didn't make moments like these any easier to swallow. "Security reasons?" she asked, her voice steady, though an undercurrent of restrained irritation lingered beneath. "Is there an issue with me or my vehicle?" Officer Thompson didn't answer her question. He merely narrowed his eyes, his stance firm. "Show me your driver's license and vehicle registration," he ordered, his tone void of the respect she was so often afforded in professional settings. For a moment, Vanessa simply sat there, studying him, the weight of a lifetime of similar encounters pressing down on her. This wasn't about a traffic violation. This wasn't about protocol. She had seen it before, had felt it before. The unspoken assumption, the scrutiny, the quiet challenge. But she knew the game, and she knew that playing it correctly was often the difference between escalation and de-escalation. With measured movements, she reached over, opened the glove compartment, and retrieved the requested documents. She handed them over without a word, her expression unreadable. Officer Thompson took them with barely a glance, then turned sharply and walked back toward his patrol car, leaving Vanessa sitting in the suffocating silence. Her hands remained still in her lap, but inside her thoughts spun like a storm. This wasn't new. It would never be new. Even as the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the country, even after years of proving herself, of breaking barriers, of shattering ceilings built to keep people like her out, moments like these still came with a sting. Minutes passed. The cold night air seeped through the open window, brushing against her skin, but she barely felt it. Then finally Officer Thompson reappeared, her documents held loosely in one hand. His gaze was sharp, his stance unyielding. "I need to see your ID," he said. His voice was sharper this time, an edge of impatience slicing through the night air. I said, "Show me your ID," Officer Thompson demanded. Vanessa lifted an eyebrow, her expression cool but questioning. "My vehicle registration and driver's license are both valid. I haven't violated any laws." "Why," she asked, her tone measured, "are you demanding additional identification?" A smirk ghosted across David's lips, his posture shifting into one of casual arrogance. He crossed his arms over his chest, his gaze sweeping over her with the kind of scrutiny that felt more like an assessment than a routine traffic stop. "You've got a suspicious attitude," he declared. "A car like this, someone like you, it just doesn't add up." The word struck like a slap, but Vanessa remained still, willing herself to keep control over the heat rising in her chest. Her pulse quickened, but outwardly she remained unshaken. "A suspicious attitude," she repeated, her voice deceptively calm. "And what exactly makes you say that?" David merely shrugged, his eyes flicking over her tailored yet understated jacket, his smirk deepening into something more condescending. "Nothing special," he muttered, "but I'm the one in charge here. And if you don't hand over your ID, I have every right to take you down to the station." Vanessa's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The weight of moments like these was all too familiar. The casual abuse of power, the smug confidence that he would face no consequences, the unspoken message that her presence, her success, her very existence was an anomaly that needed justification. She forced herself to breathe, keeping her voice controlled. "Officer," she said, steady but firm, "your request is unlawful. I have provided every document legally required of me. Unless you have a valid reason, one based on actual law, not personal bias, I will not present additional identification." David's eyes darkened, his amusement vanishing. The smirk melted into a sneer, his lips curling with something uglier. "Don't tell me how to do my job, ma'am," he shot back, his voice dripping with contempt. "People like you shouldn't challenge authority." The insult sliced deeper than she wanted to admit, a wound layered over years of proving, over and over again, that she belonged in rooms that were never built with her in mind. But she refused to let him see the cut. She met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm not challenging your authority," she corrected, her voice ironclad. "I'm asking you to exercise it properly. What you're doing right now is an abuse of power, and if you continue, it could have serious consequences." David leaned in, his face inches from hers now, his breath sharp in the cool night air. "Trouble?" he scoffed, his voice laced with disdain. "You don't scare me. Who the hell do you think you are, talking to me like that?" Vanessa didn't blink. "Someone who knows the law better than you do," she replied evenly. The air between them thickened with tension. The situation was escalating, and she could see the shift in David's posture, the way he squared his shoulders, the way his fingers flexed against his belt, inching closer to his holstered weapon. "I'll say this one more time," he growled, his voice a low, dangerous warning. "Hand over your ID, or I'll have no choice but to detain you." Vanessa inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "Officer Thompson," she said, each word deliberate, "I have complied with every legal requirement. Your demand for further identification is both unnecessary and unlawful. If you persist, you will be held accountable." The word accountable landed like a spark in dry kindling. David's jaw tightened, his patience fraying at the edges. He scoffed, shaking his head as though she were the one being ridiculous. "Accountable?" he repeated mockingly. Then, leaning in until his face was inches from hers, he hissed, "You've got some nerve. You think you're above the rules, don't you?" Vanessa felt her jaw clench, but she kept her voice measured. "I don't think I'm above the rules," she said. "I know the rules. And right now, you're breaking them. Her composure only seemed to stoke his frustration. His nostrils flared, and he ran a hand over his belt. A deliberate gesture, a reminder of the weapon he carried, the power he wielded. "You're walking a thin line here, lady," he sneered. "I don't have time to argue with someone like you. If you don't cooperate, I won't hesitate to use force." The threat settled over them like a suffocating fog. Vanessa's eyes flickered to his hand. Still resting near his gun, the unspoken danger humming in the space between them. Using force against someone who had done absolutely nothing wrong. Her stomach tightened, but she refused to let fear take hold. "Using force against an innocent person?" she asked, her voice unwavering. "You're only proving my point. You're abusing your authority." Something inside David snapped. His palms slammed against the roof of her car, the sudden bang cutting through the night like a gunshot. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but her expression remained unreadable. "Do you even know who the hell you're talking to?" he barked, his voice raw with rage. "I'm the law here. You? You're just another stopped driver. And if you don't comply, I'll make sure you regret it." Vanessa's eyes stayed locked on his. "You might want to rethink that," she said, her voice even, her tone laced with quiet warning. "This isn't just about me. Your actions tonight could cost you everything." David let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "My career?" he mocked, shaking his head. "You really think I give a damn about what you have to say?" His fingers twitched closer to his weapon. "This is your last warning." Vanessa's pulse pounded, but her mind was clear. This moment wasn't just about her. It wasn't just about this stop. It was about something bigger, about standing against the quiet, insidious ways power was used to intimidate, to silence, to remind people of their place. She refused to be silent. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for her phone, lifting it where he could see. David's expression darkened, his body tensing. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded. David's tone sharpened, suspicion lacing his words. "Who the hell are you calling?" he demanded. Vanessa didn't flinch. Her fingers moved with purpose, pressing a number on speed dial before lifting the phone to her ear. Her voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the charged air. "I'm calling someone who outranks you," she said simply. The line connected almost instantly. Vanessa didn't hesitate. "This is Vanessa Carter," she stated, her words carrying the weight of authority. "I'm being unlawfully detained by an officer. I need the sheriff's presence immediately." David's confidence wavered. His smirk faltered, his eyes widening with unease. "Wait, who are you calling?" His voice cracked slightly, a fissure in his bravado. Vanessa ignored him, instead relaying her location with crisp precision. "Thank you," she said before ending the call. She turned her gaze back to David, her expression unreadable, yet her presence filled the space between them like an unshakable force. "The sheriff will be here shortly," she informed him. "I suggest you think very carefully about your next move." David's posture stiffened. His hand hovered near his holstered weapon, but it stayed where it was. The anger in his face was now mixed with something else. Uncertainty. His jaw clenched. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath, but the words lacked the bite they held before. Before he could say anything more, the distant glow of flashing red and blue lights appeared in the rearview mirror. The rotating beams cut through the darkness, illuminating the night with an authority David could no longer ignore. The sheriff's SUV pulled up behind them, gravel crunching beneath its tires as it came to a stop. Vanessa remained motionless in her seat, her hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. She had done nothing wrong. She had nothing to prove. The driver's door of the SUV opened, and out stepped Sheriff Alan Ramirez. He was a tall, middle-aged Latino man, his weathered face a map of years spent in law enforcement. Experience lined his features, but so did something else, an unyielding sense of right and wrong. His sharp gaze scanned the scene, assessing everything within seconds. Then his eyes landed on David. "Thompson," Ramirez called out, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "What the hell is going on here?" David turned to face his superior, his shoulders snapping to attention. "Sir," he started, but there was an unsteadiness in his voice now. "This woman refused to cooperate. She wouldn't show me her ID, and she's being—" "Lower your tone," Ramirez interrupted, his voice cutting like a blade. "And holster your weapon." David's mouth opened, then closed. After a moment of hesitation, he obeyed, his hand dropping away from his gun. Ramirez's gaze shifted to Vanessa. He noted the tension in her posture, the weight of the moment pressing down on her like an invisible force. But she was composed, strong, unyielding. His eyes flicked back to David. "Are you telling me you were pointing a weapon at an unarmed civilian?" David hesitated, then took a step back. "I was just doing my job," he muttered defensively. Ramirez's expression hardened. "Your job doesn't include intimidating citizens or abusing your authority," he shot back. "Now step aside." Reluctantly, David moved away from Vanessa's car, his face pale with a mixture of frustration and unease. Ramirez approached Vanessa's window, his demeanor shifting slightly. Though his presence commanded respect, there was an air of apology in the way he spoke. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady but softer than before, "are you all right?" Vanessa nodded, but there was steel beneath her words. "I'm fine, Sheriff. But this officer's actions were not only inappropriate, they were unlawful." Ramirez studied her face, something shifting in his expression as realization dawned. His brow furrowed, his lips parting slightly as recognition settled in. "Director Carter," he said quietly, almost as if he couldn't believe the words coming out of his own mouth. Behind him, David's entire body went rigid. The color drained from his face, his breath hitching as his mind scrambled to process what he had just heard. "Director?" he echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. Vanessa's gaze didn't waver. "Yes," she confirmed, her voice unwavering. "Vanessa Carter, Director of the FBI." For a moment, silence blanketed the scene. David's mouth opened, then closed. He looked as if he wanted to say something, but nothing came. His forehead glistened with sweat as the weight of his actions settled onto his shoulders, pressing down like an unbearable force. Ramirez turned to him, his face carved from stone. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded, his voice filled with controlled fury. "You stopped and harassed the director of the FBI without cause. You pointed a weapon at her. You violated her rights." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to something even more dangerous. "This is beyond unacceptable. It's a disgrace." David stumbled over his words, his tongue tripping in desperation. "Sir, I didn't know who she was. I was just—" "You were just abusing your authority," Vanessa cut in, her tone sharp yet composed. "It doesn't matter who I am. Your behavior tonight is a perfect example of systemic abuse of power, and it has to stop." Ramirez nodded, his jaw clenched tight. "Thompson," he said, his voice like ice, "return to the station. Write a full report about what happened here. I'll deal with you later." David hesitated, glancing between Vanessa and Ramirez, as if searching for an escape. "No buts," Ramirez snapped. "Go! Now!" Finally, David relented. He turned stiffly on his heel and stalked back to his patrol car. The engine roared to life, and as he pulled away, the tension in the air began to lift, though the weight of the moment lingered. Ramirez turned back to Vanessa, his expression carrying something heavier now. Not just respect, but regret. "Director Carter," he said, his tone measured but sincere, "I can't express how sorry I am for what happened tonight. This officer's behavior does not reflect our department, and I promise you, he will be held accountable." Vanessa studied him for a long moment, her gaze unreadable. Then, with quiet authority, she spoke. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said. "But this isn't just about me. It's about making sure no one else has to endure what I just did." Ramirez's expression flickered with something almost like shame. He nodded, solemn. "You have my word," he said. "We'll conduct a full investigation. We'll take appropriate action. This won't get swept under the rug." Vanessa held his gaze a moment longer before nodding. "I trust you'll do the right thing." As Ramirez reaffirmed his promise, Vanessa knew this was far from over. She had stood her ground tonight, but the fight against abuse of power, against injustice, against a system that allowed moments like this to exist, that fight was just beginning.